I want to begin by acknowledging that we are in the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Every time I do the acknowledgement, I'm reminded of their kindness and the welcoming spirit that they have. I think about all of the trials and tribulations that they faced in the colonial period to now, under the towering shadows of the great, huge buildings here. And I know that they still express the desire to find a new way forward, and I know that they try with every part of their being to be respectful, to embrace others, and to find new ways forward together. I want to acknowledge the organizers of this conference, who this is really a very, very important gathering. We are early into the journey of reconciliation, and there are so many questions yet unanswered, so many things not understood, that we begin here in gatherings like this today. My ancestral name is Quinquinquiligetzi Wakyas, Big Thunderbird, Mighty River. It's my chieftain name among the Kwakwaka'wakw, and it's really important to me. I'm also Ambassador for Reconciliation Canada, but just as important, I'm one of the survivors of an Indian residential school where I spent 11 years. And I'm really proud to say that in the last 2 decades, I've been working on the so-called Indian residential school file that led to the apology by a former Prime Minister, the creation of the Truth Commission, and the spirit that's beginning to emerge among you, among us, about our future together. Never before in the history of this country has there been so much attention to our shared history and the idea that we can move from that to find new ways to give expression to our common humanity. So who are we in this room? It's a really important question. Who are we? Who are you individually? Why are you here? And I'm hoping that by the day's end, some of you will discover some of the answers to those questions, and that you need to ask that of yourselves over and over and over again as you go down this pathway of reconciliation. When you discover that, you will know that you have to be open, you have to be earnest, you have to listen, you have to learn, you have to engage, you have to be truthful, and you have to be respectful. Never before in this country have we been to this moment where we feel the way we feel, where we have some inkling, some idea that we don't want to hurt each other anymore, that everybody belongs, everybody's valued, everybody has purpose. So I know that we're gathered today and the focus is on UNDRIP. I always have a hard time rolling it off my lips. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And we know that the TRC has called for it to be a framework for reconciliation moving forward. UNDRIP thus becomes a tool to create a pathway forward that respects the rights of Indigenous people. I'm 80 years old now. I've struggled all my life to experience dignity and self-worth and belonging. And it's been a struggle. And I think about all of those people at home who aren't here to be able to talk to you, who have felt like I have felt through the course of my lifetime. And so this UNDRIP is not only a political tool or a legislative tool because it's been enacted into law. It is an instrument of inspiration for all of us. How deep is our humanity? How high is our desire together to be Nimuyut, like I said. So the provincial government is committed to kick-starting a process to align BC's laws with UNDRIP. I know that most of you in this room have probably read and learned more about UNDRIP than I ever will, but I'm going to leave that to you now. Because you're going to study it, you're going to learn it, you can live by it, you can share it, and it truly will be an instrument that elevates our common humanity together. One of the things that I usually do, and it's brief and it's short, is to remind people of why we're here, to remind us of our history, to remind us of the pain and suffering and loss that others have suffered as a consequence of our inability to care and to be compassionate and to be loving. And it's a paragraph in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report. It says that for over a century, the central goals of Canada were to eliminate the treaties and through a process of elimination cause Aboriginal people to cease to exist as distinct, legal, cultural, and racial entities in Canada. The establishment and operation of residential schools were a central element of this policy, which can best be described as genocide. Cultural genocide is the destruction of those structures and practices that allow groups to be able to continue as groups. Lands are seized, populations are forcibly removed, movement is restricted, languages are banned, spiritual leaders persecuted, spiritual practices forbidden, objects of spiritual value confiscated or destroyed. And most significantly, to the issue at hand, families are disrupted to prevent the transmission of cultural values and identity from one generation to the next. In its dealings with Aboriginal people, Canada, you did all of this. And I was really happy that you shared the gap indicators. I have them included, and I think I was over my time limit, so I'm glad you spoke for me. And so there are all of those horrific statistics that have been around for a long time. There's another piece of work that's really important. It was an apology by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper to the approximately 80,000 living former students and all family members and communities. The government of Canada now recognizes that it was wrong to forcibly remove children from their homes. And we apologize for having done this. We now recognize that it was wrong to separate children from their rich and vibrant cultures and traditions and created a void in many lives and communities. And now we apologize for having done this. We now recognize that in separating children from their families, we undermine the ability of many to adequately parent their own children and sow the seeds for many generations to come. Not only did you suffer abuses as children, but as parents you were powerless to protect your own children from suffering the same experience. And for this we are sorry. There is no place in Canada for the attitudes that inspired the residential school system to ever prevail again. So here we are. We stand in this moment of great promise. All of us, everybody here, every color, every race, every creed, everybody. We stand in this moment thinking about what is possible. I want to say to you today that many Canadians have expressed an interest and are ready to engage in reconciliation. Following the submission of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report, there was a national poll that was taken, and it said in part that in spite of the characterization of genocide, 7 out of 10 Canadians in post-TRC era have expressed a desire to reconcile. A second national poll that followed that said that more than 8 out of 10 Canadians wanted to reconcile. So there's goodwill all across this country. We are evidence of it. Big business, small business, industry, municipalities. There is so much interest and there is momentum underway. That's what I want to tell you today. So often we are reminded of the setbacks. Like I think today of what's occurring up in the north as we speak, and what might happen with the Wet'suwet'en chiefs and their members. And I think about what brought them to that point, that they're not criminals, that they don't hate anybody, they're defending something that for millennia was a part of them. And they're trying to signal to the rest of us that there are other considerations beyond simple bottom line that need to be considered. That's what they're trying to say. They're not bad people. And yet we read news stories about RCMP having had a sniper there before, and that the oncoming intervention might just be as frightening. What it tells me is that we need to do more work in this whole discussion on reconciliation, and that the RCMP need to be really thinking about it seriously and trying to consider new ways of confronting old problems. And so at the end of each day, we wait, and we're scared. I'm scared. And I pray for the safety of everybody. So we have that from time to time. And all of a sudden, everybody wants to throw this idea of reconciliation out the window. Please don't do that. We've got to stay the course. We've got to simply continue to work as hard as we can, roll up our sleeves and be committed to the idea that we can, all Canadians, join hands and find a way to create a better society and life for all of our children. You know, in the last 4 years, I've traveled this country extensively, and I have never before seen so much support for doing the right thing, simply for doing the right thing. Reconciliation Canada in general has seen the same dynamics emerging while we have engaged with over 2 million Canadians. Reconciliation Canada engaged with over 2 million Canadians. A little charitable organization, Indigenous-led, with not enough money, but we have big hearts and big desire to see change in our country. And Canadians are listening. And Canadians want to do what is right and want to change the way we've seen each other. It's awesome, actually, that we've had a Reconciliation Commission in this country that has 94 recommendations, and that Canadians everywhere are expressing a desire and an interest to be involved. There are so many, like I mentioned earlier, who are already engaged. The provincial government, municipalities, universities, school boards and districts, business, corporate sector, energy sector, industry, environmental community, unions, faith-based groups. There are many Canadians trying, like we are today, to find ways to incrementally keep moving forward on this pathway of reconciliation together. And here's what I want you to remember, that reconciliation happens across the scale, big and small. Sometimes there are television cameras there, radio interviewers, and others. And sometimes there's nobody but us, where we live, where we work, where we play, and we're doing everything we can to enhance the quality of life for all of us. That's pretty important too. We don't always need to do the big home run. What we need are enough hearts and mind and love to keep the momentum going. I want to say to everybody in this room, to the Indigenous people as well, that reconciliation is an ancient imperative. I think all civilizations had a view to acknowledge and recognize that creating reconciled relationships is really important. And for some reason, it escapes our lexicon that reconciliation is important. We have got to make it a core value. We start with individuals. Reconciliation won't go anywhere unless you yourself, where you sit right now in this moment, think about embracing reconciliation as a core value. You wake up in the morning, you think about it. You go to bed, the last thing you think about is, what have I done to make this a better place through reconciliation? Have I mitigated human suffering and harm and loss and hatred and racism and all of those things? So there are things beyond our institutional, corporate, and other considerations that we can do to enhance reconciliation. Maybe tomorrow you start and you have a back pocket reconciliation plan, just your very own. Maybe one of them is to look a homeless person in the eye and you nod at them. Nobody's looked in this homeless person's eyes for a long time. Maybe you save his life. You acknowledge him, you honor him, and then in that moment, even for a millisecond, he's reminded that he's human and he belongs to us, belongs to you, belongs to the human family. Our ancestors always knew that reconciliation is a journey, a desired life way. And all of the things that I've just said are reasons for why reconciliation should be considered a core value. For those of you who are students and practitioners of your own cultures, it must be clear to you that reconciliation is an ancient spiritual imperative. A long time ago, I went to Rome with some of my brothers and sisters, the national chief and some of his entourage, and we went to meet the Pope, and we wanted to talk to the Pope about making an apology. And I had an opportunity to speak in one of our debriefings, and I said that what we have to remember is that if we can truly define and enact reconciliation in this country, it has to include a spiritual component. It's spiritual as well as legal and economic and all of those other considerations. And if we do, that will be the glue that sustains this idea that we are reconciled. I still believe that. So how do we do that? Well, we get together like this, and we call ourselves to our highest consciousness. Sometimes we do prayer, or we do smudge, or something important that allows us to give expression to the highest ideal that we have about each other. Reconciliation is that personal too. You can achieve reconciliation in many ways, different degrees, just personally, while you're working for these big strokes that will make a change. So why else would we have ceremonies, ritual, prayer, song, dances? Why are Indigenous people considered custodians of Mother Earth? Why do they have protocol? Why do we have rites of passage? And is it not that we believe in the interconnectedness of all things that require balance and harmony? Is it not that we believe in one humanity, one creator, one creation? We have all been colonized, and we must all decolonize. If we remain colonized, our children remain colonized and traumatized. Unresolved trauma perpetuates despair and hopelessness. It sustains addiction and violence. Our children should not adopt this legacy. So why am I so deeply committed to reconciliation? It's because I'm a survivor of an Indian residential school. I attended it for 11 years. I was shuffled through all the grades. And while I was there, I was ridiculed, humiliated, shamed, berated, abused, spiritually, physically, sexually. And at the end of it all, at the end of the day, I was a broken human being. Felt no value, or purpose, or worth in my life. Spiraled into addiction and dysfunction and rage. My own hate. That's not the kind of society we want to create anymore. I feel the only way to restore my dignity and self-worth is through reconciling myself and others and remind people of what happened so that it doesn't happen again. We must all remember our past. We cannot simply get over it. We can transform this country together. We can make it better. So that's why I'm a part of Reconciliation Canada. We act as a catalyst and a guide for social change. We want to see a vibrant Canada where all people can achieve their full potential and share in the prosperity of this great land. We emphasize the growth of meaningful relationships through values-based dialogue, leadership, and action. We convene diverse voices and create safe spaces to allow for deep and meaningful dialogue. This leads to mutual understanding of our shared histories, a recognition of our common humanity, and the development of meaningful relationships. Our approach to reconciliation is inclusive. Everybody matters. Everybody has to be involved. We actively engage and amplify the voices of all people. We are currently witnessing many harmful divides in our societies. In order to create communities that are inclusive, sustainable, resilient, it is crucial that we build relationships that are based on respect and mutual understanding. You've all heard those words before. What we need to do is to put them into practice. Remember, reconciliation requires the ability to be open to diverse perspectives and difficult conversations. It's not always going to be easy. We have so much work to do, but we can do it. I know we can do it. We have a common connection with one another. So let's find those ways. If we're promoting reconciliation, and end with all these beautiful phrases I'm just about to read, it is to know that we all belong. It is to know that we need each other. It is to know that we all have a right to be here. It is to know that we have a responsibility to each other. It is to know that we breathe the same air. It is to know that we all need clean water. And it is to know that we cherish all of our children. It is to know that we want a brighter future together. We are one. We are forever interconnected. None of us are ever alone. So I'm going to close with those. I think I had 15 minutes or something. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm so glad to see all the sea of faces that are here, of people who obviously have an interest and obviously care and possess some level of compassion for each other. Thank you, my relatives.